Welcome to the Spark Companies podcast, your go-to resource for all things talent acquisition and career development. At Spark Companies, we're not just a talent acquisition agency. We're champions of potential, dedicated to connecting talented individuals with their dream careers and helping businesses thrive through exceptional talent. Join me as we explore the dynamic landscape of recruitment, uncovering insights, strategies, and success stories that empower both employers and job seekers alike. Whether you're a seasoned recruiter, passionate job seeker, or a business leader looking to elevate your team, this podcast is for you. Each episode, we'll dive into topics ranging from recruitment trends and best practices to personal and professional development tips. Our goal? To ignite sparks of inspiration, foster growth, and ultimately create opportunities that transform lives. So whether you're tuning in from the corner office or the job search trenches, get ready to be inspired, informed, and empowered. This is the Spark Companies podcast, where every conversation sparks opportunity. Hey everybody, welcome back. My name is EJ Swanson, and I'm joined with Aaron Opalewski, the CEO of Spark Companies. And today we are going to talk about internal recruiting strategies. And Aaron, this is like not only the bread and butter of who we are at Spark Companies, focusing on workforce solutions, but it's also relevant to so many of us who own businesses, who are looking to help people grow in their careers. And I'm thankful that we get to talk about this today. Give us just a heads up what you feel like overall internal recruiting strategies are, and give us the 50,000 foot level, and then let's jump into a couple of specifics here.
Sure. Well, we did a talk yesterday on like overall talent acquisition strategy, right?
Yeah, great webinar that you did for a number of people in, let's call it the ag business, right? Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, all across the country. It was cool. Good time with everyone on that call. So, okay, you got the overall like TA strategy.
Yep. Talent acquisition.
Yes. And then, within that, like a part of this is your internal recruiting strategy. And, we went through kind of like 5 pillars of the TA strategy.
Yep.
Well, when you look at the the last one we talked about on there was career maps and career pathing, right? Well, part of the career pathing is understanding your strategy, in my opinion. So I think like as it pertains to what we were talking about yesterday, that's where it fits into that kind of pillar. It's a part of that pillar. It's not the only part of it, but it's a big part of it.
Yeah, and I think, as the years have progressed, generations changed, I've actually really over the years seen the importance of this. I think, back in the day, people used to call it climbing the ladder, in those type of things. But the language has not only changed as more millennials are finding themselves in that. Obviously, Gen Z is now jumping into that arena. And as they do, what's next is always on their mind. I always describe to people as I'm talking to them in this realm of, there's never a plateau for these generations. And, we're on the high end of the millennial scale within that, but, there's no plateau. It's always what's the next peak? What's the next peak? And that is part of our culture right now, is that career map, that career growth. Mm-hmm. And that can look different within every different organization. Talk to us a little bit about just the career opportunities within an organization for someone.
Yeah, when you're looking at career opportunities and like your focus, so the first place I go to is there's 6 human needs, right? Mm-hmm. So one of those is the need for growth.
Right.
And, for us, like there's 1 to 2 at any given time that are like higher on the priority list for somebody than the others. They're all important, right? We all find them important at some level. So like love and connection, like that's important, right? But you got significance or recognition type need. You have growth. You have certainty, you have uncertainty. Like these are different needs, and at some level, we all crave, all of them. But there's a priority to what they are, right? So I look at someone like that's extremely entrepreneurial, right? Well, their need for certainty is not as high as their need for maybe significance, growth, recognition.
Right.
and maybe uncertainty too, right?
Yep.
Because there's some uncertainty with that.
That's right, there is.
So 1 to 2 are going to be prevalent in somebody, and so within when you're looking, you understand that, and then you understand that okay, we're going to create like a career map or an internal recruiting strategy. Well, what does that map look like? Do we only have one way up, right? Okay, well, what needs would match that would be important. We need to know that and then focus that into our recruiting strategy on how we attract people into the organization or to talking to them about the organization. But if you have multiple paths, it's more likely that you could hit some different needs within that, right? So the more different paths you have, and the map is a visual way to show that, the more likely that you might be able to take people with different like needs that are higher on their priority list, and they're still fit within your company, within your vehicle.
Do you feel like there's a standard within that internal recruiting strategy, or does it really vary per company based on that entry point or where they're bringing people at within their careers?
Yeah, good question. I think it varies on the company, right? It depends on the mission, it depends on the culture, it depends on the vision, for the company. Like what does the company want to accomplish? Is it a high performance culture? Is it a culture that's focused on love and connection? Now, I'm not saying you can't have a high performance culture that focuses on love and connection, but it really is specific to the company based on those things.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and within that, I think the question that arises for me is, we've found here at Spark Companies that we love bringing people in at the ground floor. Mm-hmm. And an internal recruiting strategy is super important, both as we're interviewing people and as we're retaining people within our businesses. Yeah. Within that, internal career path and whatnot, there is a true difference between the intrapreneurial person and the entrepreneurial difference, or that person.
Absolutely.
Who is the intrapreneurial person?
Well, I'll tell you, I don't know the exact stat, but I believe this to be true. You can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but the stat is like 7% of people are entrepreneurs. And I would agree with that. So most people aren't bred to be entrepreneurs.
Okay.
Kind of get into, I know we're going to get into that
most
likely. So, but you know what? Okay, that 93%. Guess what? Not all 93% are entrepreneurial either, but a huge chunk of that are at some level, in some capacity. There are some people that they want to come to work, they want to do their job, they want to do it well, they want to have one annual review and be able to grow within that and know that they're going to be able to hold on to their job. Well, what human need does that put at the hierarchy? Certainty, to me. Now, again, they could have another one, right? But everything that I just said is kind of like very structured, very organized, very like I know what I'm getting. Not a lot of variable comp, within that, right? It's a certainty thing. It's a structure. Okay, there are people like that.
Can I interject something real quick? Intrapreneurial, would you say that typically equates itself to leader or follower, or can those be both?
I don't really. I think it could be either,
okay.
Right? And I think that in really every instance, you should be both in some way.
Yeah, an entrepreneur doesn't mean that you don't lead.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. Your best entrepreneurs are some of the greatest leaders.
Yeah.
So I want to give you the example, like the only people that I think have like basically no entrepreneurial bone in their body would be if they literally want to roll like I just described, right?
Yeah.
And there are roles like that, and like that's okay. Well, then there's like levels to entrepreneurship, but I like to look at like, hey, at some level, any type of like variable comp or incentive pay, you're starting to get into an entrepreneurial mindset at some level, right? Where it's like, hey, the better I perform in this, or if I perform at a certain level, the more that I can earn, or this is how I earn this bonus. So you're starting to put aspects of that in. Well, that goes all the way up to like, hey, a person that works off a low base or a draw, right? And let's focus more on like a low base, but they make most of their income off variable commissions, bonuses, things like that. That's a very entrepreneurial role. It's a business inside of a business.
Yep.
And there's tons of people that are great that way.
Right.
Well, what are some other, factors of that? You could have someone that leads a group or leads a team or leads a business unit or leads a company, right? And they're not an entrepreneur, but the aspects of their compensation are tied to how the business performs.
Right.
And a lot of times, the more skilled there is to that, hopefully the more aggressive that is for them. Well, these are entrepreneurial things within the business. It's a way for them to continue to grow and earn more money and benefit from the scale of what's happening, right? Without having the exposed risks of like, hey, you have to put up the capital. There's still some certainty in that, right? But they're much higher on the growth, significance, recognition, okay with uncertainty, because, hey, you might, any good salesperson, unless they're not comped through commissions, which I think my personal opinion is any good salesperson would not take any other plan, right? It's because they're entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
And so, man, I know all kinds of salespeople in and outside of our companies that their commissions and bonuses, their variable pay is 3, 4, 5, 10 times what their base is. And that's something that they love about it.
Yeah.
And it's something I love about it.
Right.
I was very entrepreneurial.
Yep.
So that's for most people have that in them to some level.
Yeah.
Like there's different gears to that, right?
Yeah. Other than sales, where else do you, if somebody's, listening today or watching today and they're like, oh yeah, that's me. What other roles do you see people playing?
It's all in the design.
Okay.
So because like that's wired in our DNA, we are at a point now where every role inside of our company has some kind of entrepreneurial aspect to it. And even in, I'll use quotes, ops roles that historically don't have that, we've gotten more and more aggressive, and it's worked for us well, where you want to know how we outpace and we get people in roles that they get like, oh, you get a 3 to 5% raise annually. You get a bonus if the company does well, but it's like somewhat out of your control. You contribute to it,
right.
But it's not all within your control, right? Well, we move aspects of variable income and service provided to clients into their roles in their subject, matter expert areas. And next thing you know, we got people growing at 20, 25%, 30, 33% on the year. That didn't just happen in and of itself from that role. It happened because we were able to sprinkle in entrepreneurial style services that they do as well, because they have unique talents. And when we figure that out, it's help us to, set that growth like really on a more aggressive pace.
Yeah. And I want to point that out for everybody, because that is an intricate and unique part of Spark Companies that you guys have been able to help with the growth within that. Would you agree?
If you can't tell, I'm pretty passionate about
that. I mean,
it's how we want. It's designed that way.
Yeah, I love that.
We've worked hard to make it that way. Our purpose is to help people grow. One of the ways that we feel like we do that within our vehicle is through income.
Right.
Now there's other things, and that's what I love about our business is you watch someone that grows their income, and I'll show you 10 other ways that they're growing too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it can get emotional, right? Because you can sit down with them and see where they started and where they come from. I won't use names, but it comes to mind. Like I remember an interview. There's a guy that I talked to today, and he got some good acknowledgement from a team member. But when he interviewed, he's been with us for over 5 years now. When he interviewed, he was working for Coney Island.
Okay.
And he had been there 5 years. And he was making a certain amount of income, but like it wasn't really like growing anymore inside of that business. And he wanted an opportunity to make more money. So no experience,
right?
No, like first professional job and all that kind of stuff. No sales experience, nothing at all. Completely raw talent.
Yeah.
He actually was interviewed for we were looking at placing him in one of the jobs, in an entry-level job that we had for a client.
Okay.
And fortunately, the recruiter that he's talking to saw something in him and said, hey, you should interview with us internally. And he did that, and then we had that conversation. And I remember sitting there with him and said, you've committed 5 years to what you're doing.
Right.
I'll tell you what, you got to look at this like what we do as a college degree. It's really hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard. However, if you look at this, if you put that same commitment in, you follow the blueprint, you go above and beyond, you're going to explode in growth here. If you put the same commitment you put in there to here, it's going to go really well for you.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be easy, but it will work if you go at it every day. And we sit here today, and he's done that. And, he hit, a contest is a big deal for us, but he crossed his first contest in his 4th year. So kind of get in that degree.
Yep.
And crossed 6 figures on his second contest and crossed 6 figures in his 2nd year.
Wow.
And that's just a tangible example of what we do here and what we mean by helping people grow.
That's awesome.
So
I love that. Now, there is a difference within that between the intrapreneur and the entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Talk to us more about the entrepreneur.
Well, I think,
Pretty self-explanatory for most.
If you want me to, define it out, I think the difference between what we're talking about on the highest entrepreneurial levels and entrepreneurial levels is you actually kind of sign your life away.
Yeah.
You the risk
is there.
You have, there is potential great upside.
Yep.
Like none other. But there's equally, if not more, amounts of risk to tackle as well. Mm-hmm. And it's day by day.
Right.
Or it can be even hour by hour. You can have a great thing happen and you can walk out of a room and something like, man, like it's the hardest thing you'll ever do. And it's not for most people. That's why I think that's the stat I've heard. And I would say that that's probably right, 7%.
Yeah.
But here's the interesting thing, in my opinion, about like entrepreneurs. Much like there's like different levels to entrepreneurship, right? I think there's different levels to entrepreneurship too.
Okay.
So if it's 7%, it's my opinion that less than 1%, and I think I've actually seen some stats on this too, but I'm just going to call it my opinion because I don't have this in front of me or anything.
Yeah.
But less than 1% of like founders that like run the business by themselves are going to be able to do over $1 million in net income.
Interesting.
However, and I definitely think that I don't know if that's an exact stat, but I'm pretty sure it is.
I'll go with
out
it
there, and I would stand by that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the thing about entrepreneurship is I think I know there's different levels to that too, right? You look at, you could have someone, like that's why franchises are so popular. Mm-hmm. You have a situation where that's an entrepreneurial person, but they want to follow something. They want a little more certainty, right? They want a blueprint. They want to try it. And hopefully if you're picking a franchise, you're picking something that's tried and true. You get data on where to put the franchise, how to structure it out. You get training, right? You get all
your
these
products coming from
these aspects, right? Yeah, you have an infrastructure in place for better pricing. You have some stuff to lean back on.
Yeah.
Right? You have a brand, built out. You have all these things. So that's a form of entrepreneurship, and one is not better than the other.
Yeah.
Because there's people that own hundreds of franchises, and like even in that example of the 1%, the 1% business owner, 100% owner, and they're making over $1 million on that thing. One, kudos to you. You're like in the 1%. But I know for a fact there's people that do that on the franchise side, and then they do much, much more than that through that vehicle.
Right.
Same thing with entrepreneurship. Do you know how many people make more money, in entrepreneurship? You think about the big companies out there, the Apples, the Amazons, there's tons of private companies, are included where entrepreneurs are paid more than doctors make.
Right.
And they don't have all that skin in the game necessarily. That's a good deal.
Yeah.
Well, there's different levels of that entrepreneurship too. So the franchise would be one. There's more than this, but let's just hit on a couple. Okay. Franchise owner. Okay. Maybe you are an investor like on a board and you have a small piece of equity and you provide like guidance to something, right? Like board positions could go. Now, usually you don't get that unless you've developed an acumen in owning other businesses or you're a great entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's two. There's partnerships, right? Or then there's the okay, I'm the sole owner. But partnerships could look, you could have like a senior partner and a junior partner where it's like, okay, they're coming on. Maybe they provide less of the capital, more of the sweat equity, or whatever the case, and they're still getting mentorship. And there's all these different levels that could be, right? So that's how I look at that.
Wow.
And so someone, may be right at one of those levels, but it's not like, okay, I'm a great entrepreneur and I just have to go to 100% entrepreneur, because that's got a 1% chance of working out.
What do you think? And this may be a loaded question. Actually, I think you could probably take it a million different ways. What are the keys that really set apart entrepreneurs? Is it the risk versus reward? Is it the work ethic? What would you say that is?
I think
Or
there's a lot, but if I had to put it to one thing, it's the ability to get hit, knocked down, and keep getting back up and learning from it.
Yeah.
That's the number one thing.
Definitely.
In my opinion, you're not going to avoid it. It's a part of it.
It's coming, yeah.
Whereas, but that gets curbed, right? Or you get to learn from other people's, like, that's the hardest thing. And then, part of that mental challenge is that guess who's also financially on the line for all of that?
Yeah.
You.
Yep.
Well, when you kind of move down some of those lines, franchising is weird in that way, and that part's still kind of true, but you get all these other benefits, and you kind of there's different setups within that too. But like a franchise owner that's 100% has some of those, stresses at this end too. But you got all those other things mentioned to help support you on that journey. So it's two different things. You also lose some of the. You probably have a couple more rules in place. Well, so all those things in between there, I look at that as like it's less risk, right? Because you're spreading that risk outlay. In a scenario where you're on a board, it's probably less time. And in all those other scenarios kind of in between, if it's a good situation for you, you have built-in mentorship. And hopefully you're like the partners, if you're going to have partners, like everyone needs to bring value to the table in some way.
Yeah.
So let's look at our partnership.
Yep.
Look at all the, I know not everyone could see everything around us, right? I couldn't do this.
Yeah.
I couldn't do this stuff.
Right.
I can talk to you about this stuff.
And on the flip side, right, there's a lot of this that's all around us that initially starting a company, I couldn't seed. I couldn't, make happen.
Correct.
Right.
So, and there's more to it, right? But there's some just in 30 seconds, we can come up with some basic stuff.
I could never come up with a gross profit strategy. I could never come up with the pro forma, all those type of things, the business acumen that you bring to that. This is actually a really good point. And I want to take it somewhere within this.
Okay. So,
Spark companies, primarily 7 workforce solution companies within that, creating verticals, inside of that.
Yep.
For you being the CEO, where or what are the indicators that you start looking for or you start seeing that you would say to other people who are, running or managing partners in businesses that somebody is ready to make the switch?
To being an operator in one of our companies? That's a great question. I don't think of it's any one thing, but if you want me to nail down one of the key factors, it's the desire and will to be great. The desire and will to grow and push to another level and being willing to put in the work to do it.
Yeah.
Not just in a moment through motivation, but consistently, even when you don't feel like it.
Yep.
Or even when things don't go your way. Because guess what? Things aren't going to go your way.
That's right. Wow.
They can.
Yep.
Eventually, if you get smacked in the mouth enough, and you work through that. But those are some of the main factors. If those things are hard for somebody, or they only want to do that to a certain gear, then I think entrepreneurial is a better way to go. Because in an entrepreneurial setup, it's easier to get to a point where you can disconnect. Doesn't mean like, man, we have so many entrepreneurial people that work so hard.
Yeah, they certainly do.
They don't all just like, by no way I'm discounting it, but there's an ability to kind of like disconnect and take a moment.
Right.
Or a day or a vacation.
Yep.
Now, again, a lot of our top performers are not the best at that part, or what's consistent is that like, man, what I love about our business is how much flexibility you get through performance, like down the road, like when someone does this for a decade, 15 years, and they find their role. And it's like, look, I don't want to, run this business. Like I know I'm a great salesperson, a great account executive, and I want to run my accounts and relationships with the best of my abilities. Man, that role, like, the person that's gone out and hit 10, 15 contests, they have the ability, they work really hard. Mm-hmm. When they take their flex time, they're still probably doing some forms of their blueprint, but they do it on their terms.
Right.
And they get a lot of flexibility.
Yeah.
And so, but that's built, earned. That's not like a year one, year two thing. Like I just said, it's like decade, 15 years where they really figure that out. And there's opportunities to do that, before that. But I look at like, Daryl, who runs our national sales team. And when we talked about him coming on almost 5 years ago now, it's crazy to think.
Yeah.
It'll be 5 years in October.
Okay.
And, one of the things, he's like, man, like, he lives a little farther from our office. They have a place up north.
Okay.
And he wanted to be able to go do that, like wanted to be able to take long weekends. Like, I'm still going to work, like, up there on Friday. And, like, I source resumes while I'm watching football.
Yeah.
Like, he's like, but I don't want to feel bad about doing that.
Okay.
And guess what? If that's if that's another situation where that person's coming from the restaurant, they're not ready for that.
Right.
And I would just tell them that.
They don't have the discipline and the...
Whereas, Daryl worked in this industry at a high level for over 20 plus years.
Yeah.
And has brought it every year consistently. Consistency, discipline, results over periods of time, relationships. He knows how to do this job well. Like he wanted a scenario where someone was going to appreciate that, trust, that they're doing what they need to do, and get some of that flexibility.
Yeah.
Because there's seasons to life, right? And it's like, okay, you've been at this for a long time. Like, I love what I do, but I do want, to enjoy some of this flexibility, and I could still be productive.
Right.
And so that's something we agreed to. We've stuck with that. That continued to evolve through COVID and everything. And he works mostly from anywhere. He's in here, generally 1 day a week or so. Runs one of our big teams. They've been ultra successful.
Yep.
Ever since we started it up, they've crossed over their igniters the last 2 years. He's done an amazing job. And so there's a situation where it's like ultimate, flexibility, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. So, that's awesome. Spark companies, I know one of the things that you really, really enjoy about leading these companies, these teams, is that there is an opportunity for growth for everyone.
For everybody.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah.
Not everybody wants that, and that's okay, and that we're not for everybody, and we might be for some people for a season, and that's okay too.
Yeah.
The ultimate goal is to have a vision where people fit inside of what we're doing for the long term. And that's why we have all those things that we mentioned around career maps and opportunities and different, ways you can go and different like buckets that you can sit in, or someone that's entrepreneurial for a long time and gets that entrepreneurial itch. Well, we might have there's conversations that could happen on that and that have happened in certain instances, and we put people into those positions. Hasn't always worked out.
Right.
want to be honest about it.
Yeah.
But it's also worked out very well.
Yeah.
In some instances. So
Yeah.
it's all about finding the right seat for somebody, and that can evolve in different periods of someone's life. And the way we've designed it out is we try and acknowledge that right and have these different seats where even if someone evolves or that shifts for them, that this is still a good vehicle for them.
Yeah. Well, we don't do this often, at least in the last, 4 or 5 episodes that we've done this. Mm-hmm. But I know this is something not only that you're passionate about, mm-hmm. and maybe, those of you who are watching or listening have come across our channel just by, someone sharing it, or someone has, gone and recommended this channel, this podcast to people. This is something that we love talking to others about. We love helping other organizations develop this as part of our consulting. You as a CEO, you've had a ton of success within this, and we would love to partner with you. This isn't a full sales pitch. That's not what these podcasts are about. But we also know that great opportunities come from these different thought processes. And within that, maybe that's you. Maybe you're looking for an organization that's like Spark Companies. We would love to hear from you, see how we can help you, how we can work together in this season. And Aaron, again, a ton of knowledge, a ton of wisdom. Thankful for Spark Companies and everything that it represents and everything it's doing in so many people's lives. Thanks again for sharing today.
Absolutely. Thanks, CJ.
Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.